Every successful entrepreneur I've ever worked with has the same problem. They think their business issues are business issues. They're not. If you're making good money, but you still feel empty, if you're hitting your targets, but you're hating the process, the problem isn't your process, it's your identity. And here's what nobody tells you about identity work. Most people are too scared to look at this because it means everything that they've built might be built on shaky foundation. But if you're ready to stop treating symptoms, stop looking for a new process is going to completely change how your business functions, and you're ready to start doing the actually difficult work, you need to change the thing behind the thing. This video will help you do that. Look, I've worked with founders who make $500K a month. They are, for all intents and purposes, exactly where they want to be. They dreamed of this, and yet they still feel like frauds. I've sat across from guys who have everything on paper: money, an amazing wife, a great relationship with their kids, and yet there is still something that they feel like is missing. These people are, unfortunately, miserable. They think that they need better systems, better marketing, better sales, whatever. But after almost 5 years now of working with people like this and trying my absolute hardest to understand why they get themselves into situations like this, why they find themselves stuck, I can tell you with absolute certainty that the problem is almost never what they think it is. I had a client, really successful young business owner, was making 7 figures annually, had everything going right theoretically, but he struggled all of the time with losing deals that in his mind he knows should have closed. He spent months working with other business coaches, sales coaches, coaching programs, you name it, to try and figure out what this was, to see if there was a script or a way of selling that would finally get him over the line. But what we actually realized was there was something much deeper that was causing this problem versus anything to do with sales at all. The real problem was him unconsciously sabotaging him. He was afraid that if he became too successful, he'd become just like his dad, someone that was completely uncontactable. It was impossible for his dad to have a connection with him, his mum, his siblings, whoever. His dad had no real friends. And all of this compounded into this inability to close deals for fear of becoming someone he didn't want to be. This problem, this idea that if he became too successful, he would lose all of the things in his personal life, that was the thing holding him back, not an inability to close, not bad systems, not bad marketing, not bad anything else. It was literally a problem that he had created in his own mind. Here's the thing. Most entrepreneurs are working on the wrong layer entirely. They're treating business symptoms, not root causes. And this is why when you have, all the right strategies, all the right systems, and you still feel like pushing a boulder up a hill, it's incredibly frustrating. You optimize the funnel, you hire better people, you implement new processes, and for a while, maybe there's a little bit of uptick, but you hit the same wall again and again and again and again, and the same patterns show up, right? The same resistance. That same weird feeling that something somewhere is wrong and you don't know what it is. That's because you're trying to solve an identity problem with business solutions. It's like trying to fix the foundation of your house by repainting your walls and adding new furniture. It doesn't work. And here's what honestly frustrates me most about business coaching. It's identity avoidance disguised as strategy. They're asking you to change things in your business without looking at the person who's operating the business, and it makes no logical sense. You avoid the one conversation that you actually need to have. Who do you think you need to be in order to be successful? Your business problems aren't business problems. They're identity problems that are showing up in your business. The resistance that you feel when you think about raising your prices, that's not a pricing strategy issue. It's an identity issue about, can I charge that amount of money? It shows up in an ability to delegate, for example. It's broadly not a systems problem. It's an identity issue about control and trust. The reason that, a lot of these business owners, you maybe even, are feeling empty despite, all of the success that you've had historically is because you've built a business that requires you to be someone that you don't think you currently are. And your brain, unfortunately, knows that. Your nervous system is aware of it. And that's the reason that you feel the way that you do. The reason that your business feels like work instead of feeling like flow is because you are trying to fight against the current, which is your own mind. Let me show you what I call the identity stack. There are 4 layers that most people completely miss. Layer 1 is the surface layer. This is what you actually end up doing, right? So this is where most people live. The tactics, the strategies, the day-to-day business operations. I need better marketing, I need better systems, I need, a better sales process, whatever it may be. This is the layer that most coaching kind of exists at, because it's easy to measure, it's easy to scale, and it's easy to sell. Above that, the second layer of this strategy, which is how do you actually do it, right? So these are the frameworks, these are the methodologies, the processes. Here's how I run my business. Here's how I approach clients. Here's how I, do the actual fulfillment of the work. Most business coaching, if it's good, stops at this level. Well, the layer above that, and this is where you really need to focus on if you want to get those outsized returns in any given market, is who are you? This is the core beliefs about yourself. It's your patterns, your unconscious programming. It's all of the phrases that start with I am someone who blank. The fourth layer, most people never touch this layer because it is so uncomfortable looking inwards into yourself and trying to figure out why do you do those things? Why you choose the things that you choose. This is the deepest of the 4 by a significant margin. These are your unconscious drivers, the unresolved trauma, the patterns, stuff that running the show in your head without you being consciously aware that they exist. This is stuff like, having a father wound that makes you overwork to prove that you are actually worthwhile as a human being. It's a mother wound that says you have to people please instead of, setting boundaries. The childhood programming that says, if I'm too successful, like my client was, I'm going to be left alone and no one will love me. Most people spend all of their time on layers 1 and 2, but until you actually dig down into levels 3 and 4, that's where almost anyone can get to those levels. So take the example of an old client that I had. His layer 1 problem is I can't close deals. There's something wrong with my process. There's something wrong with the marketing. There's something wrong with the pre-call or the post-call flow or how we're managing the CRM or whatever it might be, right? Layer 2 problems are all of the methodologies and the processes associated with that, right? The layer 3 and the layer 4 problems, when we dug down and we found that out, are way more interesting. If I get too successful, I'm going to become someone that I hate. Once you fix layers 3 and 4, layers 1 and 2 are already working. He didn't need a new sales process. He didn't need a better, CRM management. He didn't need a different funnel. It was all where it needed to be. That unlock was a new identity that allowed him to step into all of the problems that he was avoiding, because if he did solve those problems, he would become too successful in his own mind. Let me tell you about a different client. Let's call him Andy. So Andy had built this, $1 million business. From the outside, everything looked perfect, right? Great team, great clients, good revenue, but Andy, miserable. He came to me because in his mind, he had a delegation problem. Classic entrepreneur issue, I can't let go of control. And as a result, you end up working, 70, 80, 90-hour weeks in a business that you created to escape. Well, we started digging, and what we found wasn't a delegation problem. What we found was Andy's whole identity was built around being the guy that handled everything. He was the fixer, the problem solver. He was the guy who never dropped the ball. And as a result, he made himself indispensable to the business. Well, where did that come from? Why did Andy think like this? Well, it was because when he was a kid, his parents got divorced, and that 8-year-old version of him, he decided that the reason his family fell apart is because he wasn't good enough. As a result of this idea, he'd spent the next, 25, 30 years of his life proving that he was indispensable, proving that he could handle everything. And the core underlying idea of all of that is he wanted to make sure that he would never let anyone else down again. Now, the interesting part, that identity was probably really helpful when he was building the business initially. Once the business actually kind of runs by itself, that mindset is not helpful anymore. It actually is more likely to hold you back. Now he's caught in this idea where if he delegates, well, who is he? His unconscious mind kept him trapped in these 80-hour weeks because that's what his identity required. His business problem wasn't a business problem. It was an identity problem. Once we reconstructed that identity, he could see himself as someone that created value. And by empowering others instead of doing everything himself, he could solve that delegation problem. Within literally weeks of changing this identity, how he showed up at work changed. And he'd cut his hours by almost, I think, half, and the business grew month over month again, and his team believed that he trusted them to step up, and that's exactly what they did. That's the power when you work on the right layer. So here's unfortunately what nobody will tell you. The success without identity work is just expensive suffering. Like, you'll have all the money, you'll have all the recognition, all of the external markers of success will be present, but you're still gonna feel empty inside. I'm sorry, it's going to happen. And I've seen it happen so many times. Most business coaching is avoidance, right? You're avoiding solving the deeper inner issues in yourself. It is easier to talk about funnels and systems and processes than it is to talk about why you are afraid of your own success. It is easier to optimize your processes than it is to, examine the unconscious patterns in your brain, because most people are deeply uncomfortable with that as an idea and they don't want to let that out. Here's the honest truth, right? Your business is a mirror of you, and you are your identity. If you want to change your business, you have to change how you think and what you do and how you show up. You need to change who you are in order for you to run the business that you want versus who you were to get the business as it is now. Here's how you apply this practically instead of it being kind of like an airy-fairy business mindset, woo-woo nonsense thing. I want you to map your current business frustrations, right? For each frustration, you got to ask yourself, what would I have to believe about myself? Why do I believe, or what do I believe about me that allows this to keep happening? Then, what identity am I protecting by allowing myself to keep being stuck in this pattern? Okay, so the identity audit is 4 steps. Step 1, map all of the things that piss you off within the business, right? So write down your 3 biggest frustrations. Don't do the surface level stuff. It's the patterns that keep showing up. So the things that make you want to bang your head against a wall. So the next level is you've got to trace them to identity beliefs that you currently hold. So for each of those frustrations, ask yourself, what would I have to believe about myself for this to keep showing up, right? And what identity am I protecting by staying stuck in this pattern? Third thing, you've got to identify that gap, right? Look at who you think you need to be in order to be successful versus who you actually are. Where's the disconnect? Why is there a difference there? And then finally, reframe those things. So instead of trying to become someone else, ask yourself, how can I be successful as exactly who I am currently? There's a bottom line here, right? You can keep optimizing the business, or you can start optimizing the person who's running it. That means that you've got to stop treating symptoms and fix the root cause. Most people choose to fix the symptoms because it's easier, it's more comfortable, it doesn't require you to look at the uncomfortable stuff. If you're ready to stop treating the symptoms and actually start getting down to the root of all of this and actually reconstruct your identity based on who you need to be, I work with a small number of entrepreneurs to fix this exact problem. I'll be candid, this isn't for everyone. There is no magic bullet. There is no quick fix. The reality is, you know that real change needs to happen and you are committed to changing. Those are the kinds of people that work with me. If that's you, there's a link in the description. Go to my website, read the stuff, check out my socials, just go and look for yourself on how this all works. And then at that point, you will be able to understand whether this is something that is even feasible for you. Either way, stop trying to fix your business problems with business solutions. The likelihood is, unless you have your mindset dialed in and you are in a position to actually scale, you being the operant word, your business ain't gonna grow either way. Try and be you. And if you can scale your business as you, it becomes way easier.